emergency for the first time in America.
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 1432.MT0823, certificate number 28232. The Wild Goose.
Signal all ships coming out to form up with us.
aye, sir.
So you and I, just recently, were marooned together on a cruise ship.
Does it count as marooning if you're on the boat?
No.
With 3,000 people?
We were never marooned. Although for a while we were forbidden entry to a port.
We did not get to go to Turks and Caicos.
No.
Because the Turks and the Caicos finally, after years of fighting over the island, they finally met in the green zone and decided they would not let American tourists onto their island, which fair enough. I mean, they're not wrong.
The mayoralty of Grand Turk, the city of Grand Turk, denied passage to us.
It was just the mayor? I assumed it went all the way to Queen Elizabeth.
It goes all the way to the top.
And she consulted with her privy council of corgis and decided not to let Americans into their crown colonies.
I think all those corgis are dead now. That should be a thing that we talk about on the Omnibus
From coronavirus?
No, I think that she let them die one after another.
Oh, I heard that. She doesn't want them to survive her.
Yeah.
They don't care, by the way.
Who, the corgis?
Yeah. Should somebody tell Elizabeth?
I'm not sure we are qualified to say what corgis do and do not care about.
They're going to be fine with some footman or Camilla or whoever ends up taking care of them.
Some footman. I just
Is that the Red Robin theme? Some footman. Yum.
I have spent a lot of time on cruise ships. As you know, this cruise that we just did was my 12th cruise, my 11th cruise, which seems crazy given that a mere 10 years ago, I never would have considered going on a cruise, even if forced at bayonet point.
You had that T-shirt that said, "I will not go on a cruise, even if you have a bayonet."
Yeah, I read a supposedly fun thing that I'll never do again, and also felt like it was a thing that I didn't have to do even the first time.
I learned on our cruise that a supposedly fun thing I will never do again is kind of what inspired the first Jonathan Colton cruise. They thought they would do a ironic fun cruise once, like Wallace does, but instead they fell for it.
They did. Well, we all fell for it, and now I'm a veteran cruiser. That I have two different cruise lines that have given me pins of meritorious service because I'm a long-time cruiser.
You saved all those lives. Both times.
I wear them on my uniform that also I got as a result of being on 12 cruises.
I thought it was C. Everett Koop. I was like, they got C. Everett Koop on this cruise? Didn't he die? And then it turned out it was just you with your weird naval-looking uniform with all your pins.
They make me shave my mustache, too, when I come on board, so I just have a chin beard. But how did you like cruising?
I enjoyed the cruise very much. It's a geek culture kind of cruise. There's lots of fun gaming and podcasting and novelty music.
Right.
It's a cruise based on novelty music.
It is.
Which, if you're really into Spike Jones and stuff,
it's based on novelty music, but novelty music has become only 1/10 of what happens on that cruise ship.
Yes.
There's a lot of Dungeons and Dragons playing, but also a lot of polyamory and a lot of cosplay. And
it was fun to read the message boards every morning and see the meetups that were being mooted. Or the moot-ups that were being meeted. It was like, hey, knitting monkeys, let's meet on deck 8. Hey, fantasy football monkeys, let's meet in the crow's nest and talk about our drafts.
Yeah.
Hey, New York Times crossword monkeys, let's do the crossword together at 10.
People super excited about all their crazy things. There were classes on lock picking and classes on watercolor painting.
Mindy went to do watercoloring with colored pencils.
She couldn't get in, right?
The line was around the block. She had to come back on Friday. So whatever you're into and passionate about, the geek-friendly culture of the Joko Cruise will embrace that and make it a thing.
But I think it's not an overstatement to say that some people embrace cruising wholeheartedly, and some people would rather be anywhere else than trapped on a cruise ship, in particular a cruise ship that isn't a nerd cruise, but is just a regular cruise.
Because then everybody's 105.
And they're just looking around, looking for a butter lion to lick. But did you ever, as a romantic, and I know you are, a born romantic.
Famously, capital R.
Have you ever considered sailing around the world as a thing to do in your, after your kids are grown, or living on a boat? Does it appeal to you at all?
A little bit.
Sell the house and buy a yacht and cruise the world?
I have a friend who did that, a science fiction writer who did that, and it always looks very enviable when he says, "Well, yeah, I'm in Fiji now. If you're anywhere in the neighborhood,
sure,
come on the boat." And I'm like, "Well,
drive your boat over."
How can I be in the neighborhood of what's in the neighborhood of Fiji? Nothing. I'm not a manta ray. But it seemed like a great
They're
life.
lonely is what they're saying. Fly to Fiji, please.
Please hang out with me. I've been playing solo Scrabble. When my parents moved out to Washington, I thought my dad was going to get a sailboat because
it seems logical.
He went through a sailing phase when he was young, and he was talking about maybe going up the inner passage of Alaska.
Inside passage, we say.
Inner passage seems anatomical.
It's a little. That's what Kurt Russell did.
If anybody offers to go up your inner passage, make sure they get affirmative consent.
Right.
But he, I think he wisely realized what a hassle boats were. The same reason I don't own one, and he kind of backed out.
My dad was a sailboat owner. My mom called it a hole in the sea where you poured money.
Love sailboat jokes.
Good joke.
What are the two best days if you're a boat owner?
The day you buy it and the day you sell it.
That's right. No, Christmas, actually. Christmas is very
Christmas
good.
is the best day for everyone that celebrates Christmas.
Yes.
If
you're Jewish or Muslim, it's the day you bought the boat and the day you sell it. For everyone else, it's probably Christmas.
My dad used to say that if you went to a hardware store to buy a brass screw, it would cost 50 cents. And if you went to the boat hardware store to buy the same brass screw, it would cost $5.50.
Is that true?
I think
there's
so.
Insane markup in that industry?
I think so. It's all about, because sailors, are, they want the thing that's for sailing. They want the special one.
Is that why all the sodas on the boat were like $3?
No, the sodas on the boat are $3 because you can't get off the boat and you can't bring your own soda.
It's so funny how all food is free essentially, but all drinks are not free, and that goes for all drinks. So if you go to the little burger shack, you could get 6 burgers and 6 fries for free. But if you wanted to add a milkshake to that would be $4.50.
If you even wanted a Coke Zero,
yep,
it's going to be $4.50. As a dedicated romantic, it has occurred to me to live on a boat, to sail around the world, especially as a bachelor. It often felt like I knew guys out of college that came to Seattle, tried to figure out what their housing situation would be, and settled on buying some sort of decrepit 40-foot Chris Craft yacht that they lived aboard while they fixed it up, both things in huge air quotes. But I had a couple of friends that were living on these, 1950s motor yachts that, if they were fixed up, would be beautiful boats worth a lot of money.
Did they ever go anywhere?
Oh, when they could get those motors started and like blub, 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 they would kind of motor out into Lake Union, and it was, a thing where when your friends came over, you would spend 8 hours trying to get the motor going so you could take them 150 yards out into the lake and have a cocktail party.
That's just like my hot tub.
Exactly. It's 100%. I mean, there's
it's
so
normally
many
full of slugs, but if somebody's coming over, maybe I'll clean it out.
So many versions of that where you aspire. I mean, my RV was like that. I owned a GMC RV for a couple of years, and I went on a lot of missions, but I spent at least as much time trying to chase the mice out of it as I did regaling people with my RV life.
All such possessions are a bad idea.
Yeah.
You should only buy things that take exactly zero maintenance.
But my good friend Bo, who is the bass player of the Western State Hurricanes, is an avid sailor, and bought himself a 40-foot sailboat. It's a sailboat that was built by a legendary sailboat builder. It's meant only to go fast. It doesn't have luxurious accommodations because there's that aspect of sailing that's like a sport. And he thinks of it as a sport, and it's what he does. I mean, it's his number one. It's his favorite place in the world, and it is the thing he does when he has time is sail.
But it's not his home.
No, he also has a home, but he thinks of the boat as a place he wants to one day live when he doesn't have to work.
It must be where you feel like you're your true self. You must just spend the work week you can't wait to get back on the water.
Yeah,
and I get that. It's beautiful out there.
Yeah, it's nice, and it is. It's a very different life. I mean, living here in Seattle, where we're surrounded by water, the experience of actually getting down to the water and going on a boat, you realize you're living in a completely different Seattle if you're just looking at it from 50 feet off the coast.
There are other ways to do that, though. You could get into kayaking.
You could wade out at least as far as your neck.
You could get one of those inflatable donuts with like a dragon head on it and float out in the middle of Green Lake, I guess.
Although I feel like a kayak is another hot tub that if you're not really devoted to it, you're just cleaning slugs out of it.
That's probably true. But we have some friends who have gone all out with the kayaking lifestyle and go 2 or 3 times a week. And, if you sit in it enough, the slugs can't get in. They're like, oh, this guy's in here again.
they
go
try to
else.
get over the edge and you flick them off.
Yeah, slugs are no dummies.
This is my place.
They'll go to your neighbor's kayak that hasn't been out of the garage in 6 years.
I think that RVing and boating, being just a much more expensive version of RVing, appeals to...
That's the license plate. Or that's the bumper sticker.
It appeals to a lot of people, a lot more people than actually end up sort of practicing it as a lifestyle, sort of like wife swapping. It sounds
sure,
good.
We all talk about it all the time.
Sure.
To our spouses.
Sounds good, but are you really going to make a love connection with your friend's spouse?
If you don't do it often enough, there's just going to be slugs all over him or her.
It's hard enough to do it. It's hard enough to keep the slugs off of your own spouse.
These are the 2 aspirational things for you?
RVing and boating?
Even though you're not, no.
Or having a spouse.
Wife swapping. Even though you're not married, you're always thinking about wife swapping and retiring to a boat?
I'm always trying to convince my friends to swap their wives for my RV.
You'll solve all your problems.
Well, one of the most famous yachters, and there are a lot of famous yachters.
That's a word, yachters?
Yachters.
Yeah. Out on the waters with the otters?
Yeah, yachters. It's like it's a portmanteau of yacht and otter.
I guess you can't say yachtsman anymore. Yachts people?
Yachts persons.
Yeah, the yachts persons. Only word with a silent CH, by the way.
Yacht.
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 It should be yacht.
Yacht.
Like if it were, I'm sure if it comes from German, it is yacht.
Yacht.
Or Yiddish? I don't know.
It doesn't seem like a Yiddish word.
Those famous luxury sailors.
Yiddish origins. For the purposes of this episode of the Omnibus, we are discussing a famous yachtsman by the name of John Wayne. John Wayne, the famous movie star.
The cowboy actor of limited range.
Right. Although unlimited height, if you think of the maximum height being 6'3", because he was a 6'4" actor in a time when most actors were 5'4".
You can cross-reference this with our entry on The Conqueror, the movie where John Wayne played Genghis Khan badly, and possibly a lot of people got cancer.
Oh, that's right. Well, not just cancer, got special powers from nuclear bombs.
Yes, they got special powers to die young.
Well, that could be a special power if you are resurrected in an alternate universe.
Do you think there are some actors who got superpowers from being in that movie?
Yeah, sure. Didn't Joey Lawrence, there has to be a reason that he continued to have a career.
Joey Lawrence from Blossom?
No, who am I thinking of? Peter Lawford.
Oh, yeah.
Why would Peter Lawford have a career?
I think his superpower was kissing up to the Kennedys.
John Wayne, Hollywood actor, decided at a certain point in the early 60s that he wanted to buy a yacht. He had a growing family and a growing extended family, right? He was somebody that kept close with his with the sort of larger side of his family. He liked to entertain, and he liked to travel, and he imagined that yachting would be like a place where he could, if he had a big enough boat, he could get everybody together. And
he lives in LA, where it's a marker of having a boat in the marina is a marker of some kind of prestige. I mean, he's an Iowa kid. He's a Midwestern kid born, but
right.
I'm sure LA taught him the prestige of boating.
Well, and I think if you move to the coast, there's a romance to boating that maybe those of us that grow up around boats feel like, meh. I mean,
this is a tool to us.
There they go again, ringing their bells, honking their horns,
making the bridge go up when 100 cars are waiting. But if you're John Wayne and you can afford a staff, you don't mind the travails of boat ownership. Then every day is the best day to have a boat. If you're John Wayne.
John Wayne also famously
used to beat up communists and pansies.
But also did not, and we've discussed this before, did not actually serve in World War II. And it was a thing that sort of was a lasting shame for him because he played so many World War II heroes and was thought of as like one of the great World War II characters.
I feel like if you play a World War II serviceman really well, you should not have to serve. Like, because think of how inspiring it would be for someone to watch They Were Expendable and see John Wayne in the Navy, and you think that's fantastic. He should be exempt at that point.
Right. Well, what he actually got was a draft deferment because he had 4 kids already, and was the and claimed that he was the sole breadwinner and that he needed to be exempted from the draft. Well, a lot of his fellow Hollywood hot dogs from that same era. Maybe they didn't have 4 kids, but
everybody went to war.
You know some Greatest Generation people, or you used to before they all died, right? It was a thing. It was a thing that if you didn't serve, it was a little bit of a, I don't know, gray mark on your record.
And I don't even think that's why people went. They genuinely felt like they felt the call of duty.
That's right. And I think John Wayne did too, and I think he felt bad about not serving. I mean, he's on record for feeling bad about it, one of the great regrets of his life. So in the early 60s, when he was casting about to buy a yacht as a vacation home for his family, he ended up buying a decommissioned U.S. Navy minesweeper. A minesweeper by the name, and this is a very romantic name, U.S. Navy.
I'm a romantic, so let's hear it. I'm ready to swoon.
U.S. Navy World War II era minesweeper, the USS YMS-328.
Did we not give cool names to our minesweepers? Were there just too many?
There were
at least 328, apparently.
We were really cranking out minesweepers at the time. Of this style of minesweeper, which is a YMS class a minesweeper, over 561 total minesweepers were manufactured during the war. And so, boy, you'd run out of names pretty fast. It's like Joe, Jim, Jack, Jerry.
There's got to be more Pokemons than that.
More than 561?
Yeah.
Yeah, but can you imagine the USS Pikachu?
Sure.
The USS Gibigob?
I think it would help recruitment, honestly.
Nowadays it would. You could just name them after metal albums, and there's an endless number.
Remind me, tell me about these minesweepers. Like, could you plausibly turn one into a yacht? Like, I imagine Navy ships being very different than what a movie star would expect from his luxury yacht.
Well, so the minesweepers were made on a kind of standardized hull that was designed to be kind of a multi-purpose hull. And they were made out of wood, even in an era when steel was the sort of standard for military ships, because wood actually was more resilient to, say, for instance, an exploding undersea mine. You could build wood the wood itself is more shock absorbent, is kind of a better material for this particular task. So initially, these minesweepers were made as part of a contract for lend-lease to the United Kingdom, mining harbors and mining the English Channel. These were effective military stratagem And so minesweeping was a major kind of like a necessary, not evil, but a necessary component of keeping shipping open.
And probably much more of a live issue in Europe than
Right.
it ever was over here.
Although in the Pacific theater, as we'll see, it was like a major strategy that the Japanese used to mine both harbors defensively and also offensively. Because you can drop naval mines from airplanes. So you could mine a harbor.
They didn't even have to leave them behind when they left. They could do it from the air.
Right.
I didn't realize that.
So minesweeping was a major activity, and minesweepers often what they do is they will capture mines and then detonate them. So the minesweeper itself has to be kind of resilient to a mine exploding nearby, right? They would catch them and then blow them up, and a lesser ship would experience those shocks.
Because wood's got a little give,
Yeah,
I
it does.
guess.
It does.
It's got a crumple zone.
So minesweepers were made all around the United States. There were 35, 36 different shipyards across the U.S., all making boats out of this same basic design. And then they would outfit them in different configurations for motor patrol, for minesweeping. This particular boat, the USS YMS 328, was actually made here in Seattle at the Ballard shipyard. It's a shipyard that still exists today. At the time, it was called the Ballard Marine Railway, and they were a kind of a famous, legendary shipyard that made a lot of the Mosquito fleet boats that plied the inland waterways here.
It's funny today because Ballard was before and after the war, it was kind of a sleepy, very Scandinavian heavy fishing village.
Right.
That's where the fishing fleet was. And today it's just kind of overrun with hipsters and
people in Stetson hats,
Amazon programmers
in Stetson hats.
So there's very little of the old maritime industry left, although they keep stopping the bike trail from going through. They have just enough pull to stop a bike trail from going through Ballard.
Well, you may recognize the Ballard Marine Railway because it was purchased immediately after the war by a consortium of 400 Norwegians.
A consortium of Norwegians.
Who bought it and turned it into the Pacific Fishermen's Shipyard, which still exists and is still not only building ships, but retrofitting old ships.
That's the marina kind of by the fisherman's terminal?
That's right. Yeah.
That's where the Deadliest Catch
That's right.
ship leaves from.
It's all still happening, and there are Norwegians thick on the ground there still. You can't toss a fish without hitting a Norwegian.
There's a new Norwegian museum by the locks there that I still haven't been to.
Yeah. Well, they're endangered species, the Norwegians.
There's not that many left. I can't believe they found 400 of them to make a consortium.
Well, that was back then.
Today they have to separate out. If you could put 400 Norwegians together, something terrible could happen. They can't fly on the same plane.
Well, they put sustainable harvesting techniques, so the Norwegians they're bouncing back.
The albino, there's only one albino Norwegian left, though. He's dying in captivity.
The YMS 328 is a boat that was manufactured after the U.S. entered the war. So there were a lot of these ships that were at least laid down prior to December 7th, 1941. And these ships
for Lend-Lease reasons.
For Lend-Lease reasons. And a lot of them went to the United Kingdom and to Canada. But there were then after the war, after the United States entered the war, there was a real flurry of construction of these ships that were intended for the U.S. Navy. And this boat was one of them. It ended up being finished in May of 1943 and was sent to work in the Aleutian Islands. So it patrolled around Adak and Attu.
Crossword clues.
That's right. These are great Scrabble words too. Or maybe they're low scoring Scrabble words. Attu and Adak and Kiska.
I thought they only existed in crosswords. I honestly didn't know you could actually take a boat there.
No, and it was kind of a famous theater of war because it was the only, the Aleutian Islands are the only place that the only American soil that the Japanese ever successfully invaded.
It's where my grandpa was stationed. He was manning some radio station out on, I don't know which remote island, but somewhere way out there.
Yeah.
Which is very romantic. Like, what a great place to spend World War II.
Super romantic until you actually get there and realize it's a treeless and and loveless environment where the wind blows all the time.
Well, it's awful, but you're not on Guadalcanal with the leeches.
That's true. That's true. You're there with the slugs in the Aleutian Islands, and that's where also this ship kind of did its wartime service. And then after the war, as you can imagine, there were
fewer mines to sweep.
Fewer mines to sweep, and an awful lot of boats. There weren't just minesweepers available on the kind of decommissioned ship list, but tons and tons and tons of boats.
We've talked about this before. This incredible glut of material that there was after the war.
An amazing flotilla that a lot of these ships went on to populate the navies of dozens and dozens of countries around the world.
It's the Toyota Hilux of the seas.
It really is, right? The Chilean Navy and the Romanian Navy all had these World War II era ships.
Is Romania landlocked?
No, Romania has a coast on the Black Sea.
I guess that counts.
Anyway, so this ship then was part of a decommissioned set of ships that this one in particular was returned to the Pacific Northwest. It came after the war to Bremerton and then was purchased by the Vancouver Tug and Barge Company.
I had the VTBC.
And the boat was renamed La Beverly.
The Beverly?
The Beverly.
What does that mean? Like a place you get beverages?
The Beverly.
I'm going to go over to the Beverly. Would you get me a Coke Zero?
It's like a reverie except with a B.
It's a group of beavers.
Well, anyway, the Beverly did some sort of work around the region, and then was purchased in 1956 by a local timber baron by the name of Max Wyman.
Weldon? What?
Not Mac Weldon. Max Wyman.
Wyman from Max Weinstein?
Not Max Weinstein, but Max Wyman, whose father was also named Max Wyman, who was a kind of like he was a classic kind of Northwest adventurer type who had owned timber, but he ended up also owning airlines, and he sailed around the world, and he was a benefactor to young children at one point. He was on the island of Tahiti, and there was a young girl who suffered from a congenital heart problem, and he flew her back to the United States to have a heart surgery. Like, he was one of these millionaires that we hear about all the time who we can't possibly tax, because if we tax them, maybe it would inhibit their
Tahitian girl flying airlift.
The wonderful giving that they do, the giving back, the trickling down of their wealth to help us, the people.
Thanks, Max.
Max converted it into a private yacht, and because these boats are made out of, in this case, Douglas fir, they're outfitted in an older style, Ken, in a manner unlike.
What does that mean? Cannons?
Well, no. They all had
a pirate flag.
They all had Moroccan boys doing all of the drink serving. No, they were made. If we think about a decommissioned naval ship now, you think of this gunmetal gray painted steel.
If I'm John Wayne, I don't want to buy that. That boat looks ugly, Pilgrim. Give me a nicer one.
I was waiting for your impression.
It's pretty good.
It is a good impression, and this was a nice boat. It was made of wood, and a wooden ship has wooden ships on the water. They're very free and easy.
It's the two things I know about them. Number one, they're free. Number two, they're easy.
They're very easy. Have you ever seen the Southern Cross?
This one probably was not free. I assume both Wyman and later John Wayne spent a lot of money.
Wyman spent quite a bit of money turning it into a yacht, and he named it. And this is kind of confusing to me. He named it the Wild Goose 2.
Now, will this make sense to me if I have not seen Wild Goose 1?
I do not see any sign in the record that Max Wyman ever owned a Wild Goose 1. He did have...
Maybe he's dissing his wife or something.
He had other
Caroline's
ships.
The real Wild Goose, am I right, folks?
Is that a diss or is that an invitation to swap?
Hey. Is that why John Wayne bought the boat? Is that why I bought the boat?
John Wayne loved the Northwest, and he loved cruising here. He enjoyed Alaska. He enjoyed...
Like cruising, like driving up and down the...
No, cruising like swapping wives. Are you not listening?
Truck stops and whatnot. Out by my parents' place in Sequim, there's still the John Wayne Marina, where I assume he must have parked a boat.
John Wayne bought hundreds of acres in Sequim with the idea of building not only a namesake marina, but like a whole sort of John Wayne,
Like an amusement park?
no, like a nature camping resort. He
Gotcha.
wanted to build a resort. And in the
A
end,
me-themed resort.
the John Wayne Resort. Come on up and party on. I do not do it good.
No, that was really good. His famous catchphrase, party on. Remember, he'd be like, party on, Ward Bond. And Ward Bond would say, party on, Duke.
I think his most famous catchphrase actually was my bad. My bad.
Sorry,
Hey
I
there,
beat you
kiddos.
up. I thought you were a red. Or maybe one of those queers. He wasn't really progressive politically, is what I'm saying.
No, he wasn't. A lot of futurelings may not know this about John Wayne, but an impression of John Wayne used to be one of the most popular things for kids of our generation to know how to do.
It's very easy. And then it was replaced by Nicholson.
Oh, it's the same accent, right?
I don't know if it's...
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's just something you can do without actually being able to do impressions.
You want me to hold the tomato? I want you to hold it between your knees.
Is that John Wayne if he had been cast in 5 Easy Pieces?
That's what it is. That was my impression. But I think his family continues to own that land in Sequim, and they did sort of brand this marina up there in his memory. But he loved it here. And he came here to buy his motor yacht from Max Wyman. When having bought it, he spent a lot of money converting it. It cost him $116,000 in 1962 money.
No, that's over $500,000 today.
Is that right?
I think.
Do you know the exchange?
It's roughly.
$500,000 if you went and bought a boat right now,
Yeah,
you wouldn't get a
you're not
converted
getting a nice
minesweeper.
yacht.
I'll tell
No.
you that.
But did he fancify it up?
Wyman had already made it into a nice place, and I think what you do when you take a decommissioned ship like this and you turn it into a yacht, what that is it's just like buying a house that's been used. It's just like buying a 10-bedroom house and taking 5 bedrooms away by pulling the walls down, and you just make the rooms bigger. That's a major way of doing it.
You want the hull,
And
and that's about it. Everything else is
you
fungible?
want to make Daddy wants a big room, and then you want a room with some bunk beds for the kids, and then you want a room for Grandma to come stay with you on the boat.
That's getting a little better.
Wild Goose.
It's getting a little better.
I don't
honestly.
really have a good John Wayne accent.
That just sounds like you drunk.
It is kind of what I sounded like drunk, Ken. It's been a long time.
Is that why people drink? So they can feel like John Wayne?
Feel like John Wayne. His family loved it, and they immediately commenced sailing up and down and all around. They took it down to California. It was a place that he loved to entertain. He loved to sail out to Catalina. Ronald Reagan was a frequent guest. Nixon been on the boat. I think Sammy Davis Jr. had his own
lifeboat.
He
wouldn't let him on the main boat, huh? That's
no. There was a room that was really small that Sammy Davis got. The Sammy Davis Jr. Memorial Yacht Room.
Is this story true?
No, I'm making all of that up. And the thing about Omnibus is we almost never make anything up, but every once in a while, and when we do, we call each other on it. Am I right?
We do, but I was totally going to believe your the racist stateroom policies aboard the Wild Goose story.
No, it's not. It's not racist. It's heightist.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. What's curious about the Wild Goose, the USS YMS 328, is that of the 561 total minesweepers of this style, of this designation that were made, only 16 were made in Ballard. Ballard in Seattle, Washington here by Norwegians. But
are those the best ones?
They're the best
have
ones.
the Nordic craftsmanship
and a great many of these ships went on to have other lives, and then eventually, sank offshore somewhere at the expense of all hands.
Probably not at the expense of all hands.
But during this period of John Wayne's ownership, there was another ship, almost not identical, but a sister ship, also made in Ballard, that also was one of the most famous ships in the world. sailing at the same time. A sister ship, one of the 16 made there.
Was it the Lusitania?
It was not. The Lusitania was sunk long before John Wayne bought this.
Was it the Exxon Valdez?
It was not. That had not yet been built.
Was it the Millennium Falcon?
It was not. That is a pretend ship and also a spaceship.
What was the other celebrity sister ship?
The other celebrity sister ship was no less than the MV Calypso.
Calypso!
The Calypso. Jacques Cousteau's, maybe at the time, most famous ship in the world.
Yes, because everyone would watch his documentaries from the Calypso. And it was almost like in the Wes Anderson movie. People kind of knew the ship and the crew, and it was a very kind of romantic side of science.
Yeah, Jacques Cousteau won 2 Academy Awards for Best Documentary Features, making his undersea documentaries about all the wonderful seals and whales. 2 documentaries, not like in subsequent years, but 10 years apart. He made one in the 50s and one in the 60s. Both won the Academy Award.
I grew up watching his stuff on TV. He had PBS shows, and really his narration leading you through the world. That's a key ingredient of those. I think that you kind of feel like you're on the ship with him, and it's not like most nature documentaries have kind of an invisible hand.
Right.
You don't know how they got that close to the penguins or the snow leopards or whatever. But his are more like ship's diaries. They are,
although this is hard to say, but and I don't mean like hard like it's difficult to pronounce, but difficult to say, which is that in later years it was kind of revealed that Jacques Cousteau would capture animals and put them to work, pretending to look like they were in nature.
Put them to work.
And actually maybe was kind of cruel to animals, and quite a few of them died in his captivity in the process of making these wonderful documentaries. His son both reveals this and also kind of doesn't condemn it. He says, like, this is just how the world worked in 1950. We didn't know how to David Attenborough quite as well as we know now.
It's probably true.
Yeah.
Zoos were all just concrete cubes back then. People thought animals were there to do tricks.
Yeah, you grab a seal, you chain his leg to a concrete ball, and you make him look like he's having fun.
Disney used to push lemmings off cliffs. I mean, not Walt personally, but his...
Can you be sure?
Maybe he flew up there just to push lemmings off cliffs because they wouldn't do it because that's an urban myth.
What, lemmings jumping off cliffs is an urban myth?
Yeah.
Well, how are we supposed to use that as a metaphor for people unquestioningly following leaders?
It still works as a metaphor. I don't know what you would say instead.
Oh, I don't know.
Republicans.
Instead of lemmings?
Yeah.
Boy, you're going to get letters.
Hey-o.
Send your correspondence to the Omnibus Project at gmail.com. CC Ken. The Calypso, and I'm sorry, I said MV Calypso, but it's really RV Calypso.
Oh, it's an RV like yours.
It's an RV, just like mine. And Jacques Cousteau bought it because he had run out of ideas about
Royal
how
Navy.
to have fun.
Royal Navy, of course. Is that what it means? Royal Vessel?
When I said RV, when I said MV Calypso, it's actually RV Calypso, which is a much rarer designation. MV meaning motor vessel and RV meaning research vessel. Oh. There are quite a fewer research vessels than motor vessels.
RV Calypso would be a cool name, like if you're a detective or something.
If you were like you're saying a dude
detective
name?
Who lives on a boat. Yeah, my name is RV Calypso. Here's my card.
That is a good name. R.V. Calypso.
I've come on the sloop John B.
R and V stand for Reginald Viceroy.
Bell Johnson.
Van Buren. Reginald Van Buren Calypso.
That's pretty good.
Thank you. The Calypso is the earlier of the 2 boats. The Wild Goose was made out of Douglas fir, but the Calypso made earlier for the Lend-Lease program actually made out of Oregon pine, which is
that worse or better?
I don't think of Oregon pine as being the most water
pine you make cheap toys out of, right?
Right. But Oregon pine being a very different and better kind of pine. Ken,
to all
of our Oregon listeners, I say, your pine is among the best pines. The Calypso was made for the Royal Navy. It worked as a minesweeper in the Mediterranean, and after the war was like similarly decommissioned, returned. I think all of that Lend-Lease stuff had to, at least symbolically, be returned to the ownership of the United States.
Right. It's a lend.
It's a lend.
We didn't call it the Give Donate Act. It's the Lend-Lease Act, yo.
So they were like, here's your boat back. And of course, the United States said, we're not interested. Thank you. And decommissioned it immediately. And it was converted initially to be a car ferry that worked the Malta route.
Oh, really?
It was a Maltese car ferry.
Where do you go from Italy to Malta on a car ferry?
I think from Malta, yeah, you'd go to
or North Africa, maybe.
Right. Tangiers. No, you would go to Algiers. No, you would go to
some Gears.
Tunisia. You'd go to Tunisia is where
you go to Tunisia.
And then it was purchased secretly by Member of Parliament Thomas Guinness
of the Irish
Guinness
family.
Guinness family. Although Thomas Guinness, born and raised in New York, but he was kind of a World War II, a jaunty sort of pilot, one of these aristocratic Spitfire pilots that fought in the Battle of Britain. There kind of has a famous story that at one point he was flying out during the war, but gas was rationed, and so he bought a gas station next to the aerodrome just so he could have more gas for his sports car to drive around on the weekend. You know, rich people. If we tax them, Ken, what happens is they don't use that money to benefit the rest of us.
He's creating jobs with his gas station next to the base.
He bought a gas station in order to have gas.
That's the engine that the economy drives on.
Thomas Guinness did not buy the boat for himself. He bought it for Jacques Cousteau, famous French animal torturer and sea explorer.
See, this is why we can't tax the rich. Who would donate boats to
Jacques Cousteau,
to prominent French animal torturers?
But he did it under the condition that he be anonymous, and the gift of this boat, and it wasn't a gift, it was a lend-lease. He leased it to Jacques Cousteau for 1 franc a year, and this is before francs. This was back when francs were not worth as much as they are today.
Just one Frankfurter. Jacques Cousteau had to give him
one hot dog.
Hot dog every year.
No, a franc, which at least the last time before francs were tied to the euro and then absorbed into the euro, I always think of francs as being worth 1/4 of an American dollar, 25 cents. In the same way that a Deutschmark was worth 50 cents and a British pound was worth $1.50. These exchange rates are absolutely sealed in my head from 1985.
Well, regardless, I think we can agree that Jacques Cousteau got a pretty good deal. Even if it was $1.50, that's a screaming deal.
He had to keep this secret though, and he did until after his death. No one knew that that MP Guinness was the benefactor of Jacques.
Why did rich people don't generally want to be anonymous? If you ever looked at the list of donors at a concert hall or something.
Have I ever? God, they're engraved right in the wall. The program is 90% donors' names, and you
have to get down pretty low before you find the first anonymous. Like that's usually at the $4.99 to $9.99 tier.
A half a dozen anonymouses who don't want their housekeepers to know that's why they can't give them a raise this year.
That's exactly right.
No money in their Christmas card. In this case, I'm not sure. You know, there still are rich people of the old school, Ken, the old guard, who aren't looking for fame and accolades. They aren't benefactors just to sway public opinion,
just to see their name on a plaque.
No, they're doing it for all the good reasons. And in this case, the Calypso, arguably,
this guy just loved to see octopuses tortured.
Well, but also, I mean, the Calypso, I think you could make a very powerful argument, sort of kick-started the environmental movement and invented popular oceanography. It's why all the girls named Brenda, who went to elementary school with me, wanted to be marine biologists.
Yes, I was about to say, every child now, for the last maybe 50 years, goes through a brief phase of wanting to be a marine biologist.
I checked this out with my daughter not very long ago. I said, because when we were having that conversation, what did you want to be when you grow up? my daughter's mother said that she wanted to be a marine biologist. And my daughter didn't know what that was. And I said, well, if you grew up in the 1970s, you definitely wanted to be. And if your name was Kirsten, or Kristen.
If you were a horse girl.
You wanted to work with dolphins or fish. And my daughter confessed that none of the kids at her school had any interest in being marine biologists.
Is that true? My daughter went through a marine biology phase.
Well, but your
and
daughter's,
I'm not sure what the vector is.
Your daughter's what, 8 years older than mine?
That's true.
So it must
is she the last of the last of the dolphin lovers?
The last of the great marine biologists.
Everybody at your daughter's school just hates dolphins so much.
Or it might be
they
a
eat
thing
them for lunch.
My daughter just turned 9, and maybe it's a thing that happens when they're 12. When did Kate go through her dolphin phase?
I think she was younger than 12. This was like 7, 8, 9. There was some kind of whale or dolphin phase.
No, I don't think it exists anymore. I think it's gone.
That's sad. Well, I mean, all the fish are going to be gone soon too.
Right.
So that's nature's way.
Jacques Cousteau died in 1997, which in our time feels like not that long ago, but it is actually 23 years ago. And maybe it's a 21-year-old hangover. After the death of Jacques Cousteau, his memory still reverberates in the culture for 20 more years and then is gone.
He never got replaced. There was nobody else has filled the undersea guy niche.
Well, sadly, when he died, he left a fairly complicated estate. Jacques Cousteau was married to his first wife, Simone, for many years. And
I thought his wife was the sea.
His life, his love, and his lady was the sea. But his wife was Simone.
Was Brandy. I mean, Simone.
And Simone was like an integral part of his whole operation. She kind of, she was a scuba diver and was, I think, kind of legendarily the person that kept the lights on. She kept the books, and she actually was a big part of the promotion of his whole operation. But in the style of the time, was weirdly given almost no credit in the public imagination because Jacques was the face.
I was just reading something about how literally all the great nonfiction writers of the 20th century, like their wives were doing some to all of the work.
Yeah.
And almost always without credit. And it was just typical at the time. Like it was weird when Will Durant actually started crediting his wife as a co-author late in his career because everyone just kind of assumed, well, yeah, you've got a full-time research assistant. You married her. It's awesome. She doesn't want a thing.
Right.
You don't have to pay her. It's fantastic.
Jacques Cousteau kind of said about Simone at one point, she did not like to be in front of the camera. She preferred to be back in the cabin.
What an outrageous French accent he had.
What's crazy? This he did not want his wife to be a famous. Anyway, together the two of them had some children, as we say. She was the mother of his 2 children, Philippe Pierre and Jean-Michel.
And are these the heirs to the Cousteau Empire?
Here is the problem. After her death, they were married until she died. I can't keep doing it, not because it's not great, but because
it's incredibly annoying.
It's really annoying and offensive. Oh, Keto, I am in no mood today. After she died, he married his second wife, Francine, who was a flight attendant and his longtime lover, because he was French.
Yes.
He had
he got assigned a wife and a girlfriend.
They had the
probably at the same
swapping,
time.
Except it was not a swap. It was aussi girlfriend aussi.
He had a pied à terre. There's a reason why they invented the word pied à terre to mean place where you boff your girlfriend.
Right, place where you boff your girlfriend.
That's French for pied means place.
Pied means place.
Means where you boff.
Girlfriend.
And terre means your girlfriend.
So in marrying Francine, according to French law and to many, many laws of states around the world, the estate of Jacques Cousteau transferred to his widow. And this began a long and difficult struggle within the Cousteau family for control of the Cousteau legacy, along with which went control of the Calypso.
Actually, the boat.
And Jacques Cousteau's sons, Jean-Michel and Philippe, and then Philippe's daughter, Alexandra Cousteau, that side of the family kind of has been caught in a very protracted, now 25-year-long legal battle with Francine over Cousteau's legacy. And there are competing visions about what to do. The Calypso, unfortunately for us and for the Calypso, sank in 1996 in Singapore. It hit an obstacle and sank, but was...
Too bad it wasn't still equipped as a minesweeper. It might still be around today.
I don't think it hit a mine. I don't think the harbor in Singapore is mined, although one never knows.
Now it is, maybe.
But the boat was raised and returned to France, where a restoration project was, initiated. The idea being to turn the Calypso into a floating museum or an interpretation center or something like this, despite the fact that Jacques Cousteau very famously in 1980 said that I believe the Calypso should be scuttled and sunk and turned into a reef because I would never want to see this beautiful boat prostituted as a museum.
He didn't want to, because you know what I hate? Museums. That thing that's famously bad for science.
I feel like he had a lot of good parties. He sailed around the world 15 times or whatever, and he did not want noobs and snorks tromping around on the deck of his boat.
It's a fit of pique. He's like, if I can't have this, I'm going to blow it up and the coral can get it. And my ghost will come back and torture the coral.
He does not want to swap this last most beautiful wife and share her with everyone.
He wants to swap it with his life, his love, and his lady, the sea.
The sea,
That's
exactly. Right. Anyway, in the process of trying to restore the Calypso sat, and there were money problems. It appears that Francine is in the long line of the second wife who doesn't fully understand what the husband's legacy is exactly. She spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting against Cousteau's children and grandchildren, who are conservationists and ocean explorer types, but no one has relinquished an inch of ground or a fathom of sea.
Who's likable? Who are we rooting for here?
Well, I don't know.
None of them are likable because they're French?
I don't find very many likable characters. Certainly no one believes that the boat should be scuttled, which was his final wish. It seems dumb for families to get into protracted legal battles over the material possessions or legacies.
You just fritter away the fortune.
Yeah, and really, my sense is that his sons want to use the Jacques Cousteau brand to create a conservation-oriented media empire. And who knows what Francine wants. She
wants the checks to keep coming?
She just wants the checks to keep coming, yeah. The sad fate of the Calypso is that it sat moldering in various dry docks. Work commenced on it several times, sort of like the SS United States. Right. It traded ownership. People, at one point, the Guinness family got involved again because they were nominally the owners. And
somebody forgot to pay the franc.
Yeah, like Lowell Guinness had some say in its sale to like another consortium, not of Norwegians. And as time has gone on, as the 25 years have progressed, the Calypso has now gotten to a point where it is a complete wreck.
She is not seaworthy.
She's been stripped, and also all of the Oregon pine has been rotted away and has been taken off of her, and she's just a skeleton of a ship sitting in a warehouse in La Rochelle in France. And the harbor master of La Rochelle wants this skeletonized boat out of whatever shed it's occupying on the coast.
Is it on Craigslist?
There are
or whatever Craigslist is called in France, Renee's list.
Liste du Craig.
Like if I can haul it away, can I get the Calypso?
I think the people of La Rochelle are saying, can we just take this out and sink it and make it into a reef and call it the Jacques Cousteau Reef, kind of like the John Wayne Harbor.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the story of the Wild Goose ends slightly better. John Wayne, in the last days of his life, recognized that leaving the Wild Goose would cause like a problem in his estate.
I recognize that leaving the Wild Goose would cause a problem in my estate.
He didn't want his kids to have to fight over the Wild Goose.
I don't want my kids to fight over the Wild Goose.
And so he sold it, and he sold it for $750,000. So he made a tidy return.
Because it's still a nice boat that someone wants.
And its next owner built a whole third floor on what had formerly been the deck, built like a big salon and a nice.
Does it look weird?
It looks a little weird. It does not. It did not retain its silhouette, and built it. Yeah, this happens a lot. Like when Jimmy Carter sold the presidential yacht.
Oh yeah, the hold on, Sequoia.
The Sequoia that had hosted, all these wonderful. Harry Truman and Roosevelt, all these signings and
this was Carter's kind of like good prim Baptist mentality is
right.
We're in a recession.
It's an austerity move.
I can't have a yacht.
And in those first few months, right? The next owner was like, I'm going to turn it into my super cool yacht.
It's going to have a waterbed.
It wasn't that much longer that somebody said, hey, that's like a historic boat. We should try to return it to its original state. And that kind of is what happened to the Wild Goose. It underwent some conversions and became somewhat unrecognizable. The longtime captain that worked for John Wayne, a man by the name of Pete Stein, didn't live to see its current state. But his old first mate, Bert Minshall, his old first mate, Bert Minshall, who started as a deckhand and became its captain, is still alive, wrote a book about his time with John Wayne on the boat.
Oh, wow.
And says that hardly anything about the boat remains the same as John Wayne had it. John Wayne commissioned a mural of like Admiral Nelson's naval victories that's still on the boat.
He really felt like he was a man of the sea.
He
now
really
that
did.
he's bought a yacht. I'm in the long tradition of Columbus and
he's moored
off
of Port Orchard, and he's looking up at his Admiral Nelson mural. But the Wild Goose still is afloat and still is in operation.
What do they do? What does it do?
It is owned by the Hornblower Cruise Company. Again, a little bit of an aspirational name, considering that they're based in Newport Beach, California.
I'm sure they run all the biggest cruises out of Newport Beach. And
you can hire the Wild Goose for your bachelorette party. It
sails out and back.
Yeah, it's like a day tripper motor yacht. So the Wild Goose lives on.
People getting drunk on it. Just like John Wayne would have wanted.
That's right. You can go, if you're small enough, you can go sleep in the Sammy Davis alcove.
And that concludes The Wild Goose. Entry 1432.MT0823, certificate number 28232, in the omnibus. Futurelings, it appears that social media will not be the thing that ends the world, but it wasn't great while it lasted. And yet, here John and I were. John's off Twitter now. Good job.
Well,
still? Did you fall off the wagon last night?
The whole COVID-19 coronavirus stuff has got me kind of back on there, snooping around because I
want the latest.
I'm a human being. I want to know what's going on. I'm sequestered, but I don't like it on there.
It is the problem with Twitter. Is it really is the fastest way to get to know everything, whether it's true or not. The speed is very attractive. We are at Omnibus Project on Twitter, et al., Facebook, Instagram. John is at John Roderick on Instagram. I'm at Ken Jennings on Twitter. You can email us communication in our day at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. You can send us physical items at our P.O. Box, P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155. We will Purell the hell out of whatever it is, and then we will open it and take a look. Did you see this, John? The sodium citrate someone sent us? That's alliterative.
Someone sent us sodium citrate?
It even says sequestering on it. I don't know why it says sequestering.
Someone sequestered us some sodium citrate?
The secrets of sodium citrate have been sequestered.
Sodium citrate has secrets?
It's the thing where we mentioned it in government cheese. It's the ingredient you can mix with almost any liquid and add to any cheese, and it has the magical power to make any cheese the consistency of Cheese Whiz.
Yes.
So if you want to make provolone Cheese Whiz or Manchego Cheese Whiz, all you need is this sequestered powder in here.
I don't think I want those things.
Oh, well, I'll take this home. I'll make weird off-brand Cheese Whizzes. Cheeses Whiz, I don't care.
Cheeses Whiz.
You could also support the show financially at our Patreon, patreon.com/Omnibus Project. I mean, I know we're entering into a global recession right now, but for those of you who still want to throw your support to the show, we admire the optimistic spirit there.
Yes.
That this is something that we as a people are going to get through.
Yes.
And the way to symbolically show that is to support your favorite podcast, obviously. No, that's the main thing. When you get your government check, when you get your first UBI check, send us what you can afford. Why not? John's not going to cash his. It's going to sit on his microwave for 6 months.
If you are a millionaire and want to trickle down, you should be out helping people. You should be buying respirator masks or donating your money to find a what is the word? An inoculation. Thank you. You should be devoting your money to hurrying vaccines through the pipeline. But if you're a billionaire and you're just throwing money everywhere, throw some to the Omnibus Project.
It's just rounding error. Convert the tiniest bedroom on your yacht into a hospital bed space.
That's right.
Why not?
That's right. Did you do our P.O. Box?
I did.
Yeah.
And I did the Facebook. Oh, the Futurelings congregate on Facebook as Futurelings. There are similar gathering places on Reddit and Discord probably. Mm-hmm. But it's not a time for Discord.
TikTok?
It's a time for unity.
No, stay off TikTok. It's bad. TikTok's bad.
You've got some experience now.
Well, no, some news has come out that TikTok, which is a Chinese government potentially owned operation, had a policy in place to delete posts or downvote posts made by ugly people and poor people. So we're not supporting TikTok.
How Marxism has failed.
We don't even know what it is. That's right. That's the Marxists failing. Maoists.
That's right. Maoism used to love ugly poor people.
They did.
It was their main thing.
It was as they were killing all the glamorous rich people.
Mao's not a great looking guy, but still giant 6-story banners of his face all over Beijing because that's what they celebrated.
Celebrate diversity. That's what I say, and that's what the Chinese communists say. Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have a pretty good idea how long our civilization survived. It survived into mid-2020, before it came completely unraveled at the first sign of trouble.
Is this the official position of this show now, that the coronavirus is the cataclysm? Because I was going to say it is not.
No, I cannot say that it is the cataclysm. I think that we will survive this as so many other slings and arrows. But we hope and pray that is true. And we hope and pray that this catastrophe that we fear may never come, and that this flu is not the beginning.
This won't be it. We're gonna ride this out just in time for the meteor to hit or whatever.
Right. But if the worst comes soon, if this COVID infection is followed by a gigantic earthquake, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.